As crafters, we have a lot of scraps in our stash. I'm going to share how to create some fabric scrap fall crafts to help you use up that stash. This project's going to be an easy one. You are going to need an embroidery hoop, a scrap of some burlap fabric, or you can use any fabric that you like. I am also going to be using the addition of this cotton. It's almost, I don't even know what it exactly is. I just picked it up from my local dollar store. It's like a scrap of some cotton. It's almost like a burlap, but it's not quite. Maybe it's like I actually don't exactly know. Anyways, I laid them flat. You can see that the off-white one is shorter. And what I'm doing is going to create a pocket out of that one. So I laid one on top of the other, put my hoop into place once I had it all opened up. I layered these appropriately so that they would fit on the hoop without it popping out. And then I'm going to just tighten it all up. I will need to go in and just pull on the fabrics a little bit, and that will remove any wrinkles that may be showing. You just want to make sure that that screw is all good and tight. Once the fabric has been pulled taut, you can then trim off any of the excess. I'm just going to be using my scissors for this, and I'm trying to get as close as I can to the hoop. You can see I'm not super close there. I did end up going back in and removing some more. Now to seal it all up, I am going to be using my hot glue gun and a silicone brush and just sealing that all up. That will help prevent the fabric from popping out of the hoop. I grabbed a selection of some fall florals and seed pods, some twigs that I had in my stash. I'm going to start to fill up that pocket. I'm going to start off by adding the branches. I love to add branches to different projects, especially if you're adding them to some fall or some faux florals. I just really find that it really helps to make this look more realistic. So I'm going to go ahead and start to layer all my elements in the pocket. If you glued it well enough, it should not pop out. I was debating whether or not to use those berries. I decided not to, but I did like these seed pods. They are dyed seed pods and they are on a wire stem. I grabbed those from Michael's. I think it was from last year, and I get mine when they are on clearance. I find that that's the best time to buy them from there. I also added those fuzzy little, I think they're called horsetail. I added those, or maybe they're bunny tail. I can't remember. If you know, let me know down below. But I added some of those as well. This is just such an easy project. You can add a bow to this. You can add some grasses, anything you'd like. I'm creating my hanger by just using some jute twine, folding it in half, putting the loop through the embroidery screw there, and then I'm gonna pull the two tails through that loop, and that will create a nice tight knot at the top, and then tying a knot using the two strings that are there, and then you've got a really simple and easy project that is absolutely beautiful for fall. I had these scraps of some cotton that's been coffee dyed, and this is a nice long strip. And so I'm going to just cut into this, and I'm going to tear it to create a nice long strip since this piece was nice and long. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove any of the strings, loose strings that are there. I find that those just get in the way. I know some people will use those strings for different projects, so if you have any suggestions on how to do that, leave those down in the comments section. I did go and cut out 3 strips of the fabric. So next you're going to need some really fun stamps, and I've got a selection of some different fall stamps that I have. I'm going to be doing this on a flat surface as well as on a craft mat. So you're also going to, of course, need an acrylic block or maybe you've got some rubber mount or wood mount stamps, so you won't need the acrylic mount, but I find this works better if you do have an acrylic mount, because then you can see the process more easily. So I'm just going through all my stamps to decide on what I want to use here. I've got quite the selection, which is really great to be able to have on hand. I need to utilize them more often, so I thought this would be the perfect time. You need some permanent ink. I've got some archival ink in the black as well as potting soil color. I'm going to test it out on another scrap of the coffee dyed paper that I have, coffee dyed scrap fabric that I have. And I just want to see how each of the colors look on the fabric. So I do prefer the potting soil. I just think that it goes with the coffee dye better than the black, but of course that is personal choice. And now all you need to do is lay out your strip of fabric and select one of your stamps. I'm going to go with this oak leaf, ink up your stamp, and then start to stamp your fabric strip. And you want to make sure that you rotate your stamp so that the image is going in different directions. I will also be taking my stamp and going off the edge a little bit, like you see me doing here. It does make a mess on your craft mat, so you'll want to clean that up right away. Or I'll be showing you later on how I use a piece of scrap paper to stamp onto, and that will help save some mess that you might end up creating. So I'm going to go ahead and just stamp away, and then I will be changing out my stamp image to create more of a pattern. So here you can see I am using that piece of scrap fabric scrap paper, and that is going to save me from having to clean up a mess all the time. It's just saving me time. So here I am adding a cute little acorn, and you want to make sure you mix up your different shapes. I find that that really helps to create an interesting pattern when you're doing this. You can kind of treat this like it's a piece of ribbon almost. So I felt like it just needed a little bit more. So I had this tiny little leaf stamp, and I decided to add that just here and there to look like it's a little scattering of some little small leaves. So I do end up creating two other patterns off camera, and I will show you what they look like. They can be used for gift packaging or to decorate some different elements in your home. You could even do this on a larger scale and wrap a jar and use it as a candle votive. So here you can see that I have a wider strip that I've already pre-stamped. I'm just cutting it down to size so it will be long enough to wrap around my jar. So I'm just going to use some hot glue to attach it. I didn't put the fabric into the hot glue fast enough, so I had to go back in and add a bit more. And now I just wrapped it around, and I'm going to finish adhering the fabric. So for an added little touch, I decided to wrap some twine just around the top of the jar. You could use anything like such as string. If you want a touch of color, you could add some florals, whatever you like. I just like the simplicity of this. And all you need to do is add a battery operated candlelight, and then you've got a beautiful votive for the fall season. It just looks so nice and cozy. Another way I thought would be fun to use these fabric strips was to wrap these wood pegs with them. So here are the different patterns that I have, and I have to say they turned out so beautiful. I was actually thinking these would be really pretty to use as some ribbon for a wreath as well. I have this gingham coffee dyed fabric as well that I'm going to wrap a peg with. So I've got two different size pegs here. And I just decided on which fabric I would put on which length of peg. The smaller peg I'm wrapping with this black and white gingham. I think it looks really pretty. And all you want to do is just wrap it, and you can see that I'm kind of wrapping it offset, and that will create a bit more of an even look. But you could, or an uneven look. It doesn't bulk up too much. You can use a stick pin, or a straight pin, or a safety pin. I am going to close mine off using just some jute twine. I wrapped it around a couple times and then I tied it off with a simple knot. I was thinking that this would be really pretty to add in a little tray, say like a tiered tray or on a coffee table tray. I just think it would be a nice vase filler too, however you like, and it would also be a great way to store these pieces as well. So here I've got the longer peg, and I'm going to wrap my stamp fabrics onto these longer pegs, and I'm going to be tying these off as well. If you have like some rusted old little pins, that would be a really pretty touch too. Decorate these however you would like. This was an easy project, and I think it'll be a great addition to a fall tray. I grabbed a selection of some different scraps. I've got this orange burlap, and I've had this for a long time and it's seen better days. I also had this scrap of just natural burlap, and I had ripped it off of an old project, so it was a hot mess. So I'm gonna have to clean this up. And I also had this scrap of coffee dyed fabric that I had left over from another project. So I'm going to fold this in half and then cut a piece out. I'm going to need 2 pieces, and I wanted to keep that fringe on the bottom. I thought it was a fun touch. I just cut it and then tore it and removed the excess strings that were attached. I also grabbed these felt kits that I had picked up from Dollar Tree a while ago. This is one with a fox. I know they have some different felt kits now, so you'll have to check out your local dollar store or Dollar Tree to see what they have, but I just grabbed it because I wanted to measure out how big of a fabric piece that I need. So I've got this piece here. I folded it in half, and then I'm going to cut it down the middle. I am going to need 2 pieces of this fabric. I had seen a project on Pinterest that had inspired me. They had some homemade felt pieces that they had put together. But since I knew I had these little felt kits, I wanted to use these up. This is a cute little fox, so that's going to be going on the front of that. Now to work on my burlap. Again, like I said, I just needed to cut off the mess and then cut a usable piece out of that mess. And I'm going to be doing the same thing using this hedgehog felt kit, and I'm going to just measure that. I actually end up changing my mind a few times. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put an owl on here. No, I'm going to put the hedgehog. Anyways, I'll show you what I end up doing in the end. But they were both roughly the same size, so I knew if I changed my mind, it wouldn't be a big deal. But now I'm cutting the burlap down to size, and I've got 2 pieces there, and the same thing for the orange burlap as well. Okay, I've got all my fabric pieces ready to go. I'm going to be using my mini press to iron these out. And I've also got my little heat press pad here, and I'm going to mist them with water, and then I'm going to iron out the wrinkles once my mini press was set. I find this mini press is so handy for crafting and having it in the craft room. So I'm going to have a link for that down below for you to check out if you are all interested in that. So I'm going to go ahead and iron the rest of these until I've got all the wrinkles out. It'll just make your project in the end look a lot cleaner. So I set my fabric pieces aside, and now I'm going to work on my felt kit. Now, silly me, I had lost the images on how to put these together. It was like a little paper piece. I lost that, so I'm trying to figure it out. And then I remembered I had done a video a while back on the haul of these, so like when I bought them. So I referred back to that, and I roughly got the right layout of how to place all these things. What I decided to do was just kind of put them all together first to make sure I had all my pieces laid out correctly. I didn't end up using the leaves or the acorn. I just used the owl for this particular project. So once I knew I've got the placement right, I decided just to use my hot glue for this, and I'm applying some glue. Now, as you can see, I have a bandage on my thumb and the hot glue kept on sticking to that. I've had to wear that bandage for several weeks now. I had hurt my thumbnail and it's looking really icky, so I have to keep it covered up also to protect it. But yeah, I should have maybe used some tweezers to apply these, but what I may do, right? Anyway, so I glued everything together, and then I am going to have a video of how all the little critters look when I was done. So if you want to reference back to, if you have these kits and you want to reference back to these how these look, then you can just pause that and take a screenshot if you would like. All right, so here are our critters all done and put together, looking so cute. So now we are going to start to create pillows. I am going to be putting the two wrong sides together, and I'm just going to be using hot glue. I'm putting a strip just, I would say, about 1/2 centimeter away from the edge. And then I'm going to just press the two pieces together here. You can sew if you'd prefer. As I've said so many times in the past, I am not good at sewing, so I love to use my hot glue gun. I'm actually thinking, let me know if you have done this, got some fabric hot glue. I want to see how well that works. So if you have used fabric hot glue, please let me know and I will give that a whirl. All right, I'm going to stuff my pillow now, just with some pillow stuffing that I had on hand. Fill it up as much as you'd like. I didn't want mine to be too full, so then my little fox will sit on here nicely. Once you've got that filled up, you can go ahead and seal that off. And then you can fray the edges of your fabric if you'd like. That's just easy to do by pulling out some of the threads. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue my little fox on the front. I'm just going to start off with the bottom half and then put him in place and then go back in and finish adhering him. One thing I do is focus on the little pointy pieces. I'm adding a little bit of extra glue in those spots because I don't want those to lift off by accident. If you have some wet glue, then go ahead and use that, but I just decided to use my hot glue. So here I am fraying the edges of this particular fabric by just removing some of those threads. And then I decided to add the owl to this orange fabric. I just kind of like the look of that better. I felt like the hedgehog didn't quite look right against this background. I thought the owl looked so cute. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the burlap and hedgehog little pillow as well. I think these little pillows turned out so cute. You could use them in a tier tray or you could even set them on a shelf. I had this old styrofoam wreath that I have had on hand for a long time, and I wanted to use it for this project, but I didn't like the sharp angles that this had, so I'm just going to trim off the edges just to create more of a rounded shape. Of course, you might not have to do this depending on what wreath form you have, but if you've got an old one like this, it's just easy enough to do. So I've decided also to trim off the center portion of this wreath as well. I had picked this up, I think either at a garage sale or at the thrift store, and I'm so happy that I can use it up now. Okay, I've got a ton of scraps here. This project is going to be great for using up all those smaller scraps or those weird ones. So all I'm going to do is just tear some of my pieces down, and then I'm going to be using those pieces to wrap around this styrofoam wreath. You can see I've got a really nice selection of some different fabrics here. And they also are all really nice for nice colors for the fall season as well. Once you have your pieces all cut down, you can start to wrap your wreath. So I'm going to start off with the burlap. I just wanted some neutral fabric wrapped around just to start. I'm going to use my silicone brush to help me press that into place. I also want to just let you know that some styrofoam melts when you apply some hot glue. So I would definitely test it out first before you did this. If that happens, then you can use some pins to place the fabrics into place on the back side. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to wrap this wreath, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. So I have some of the burlap laid out, but before I committed to adhering the rest of my fabrics, because these are the ones that have got all the color and all the patterns on it, I decided that I would put them into place first before I glued them, just to see how it looks. And that will give me a chance to move things around if I want. And then what I typically like to do is actually take a picture of this when I'm done. And then I'm going to set that picture aside so I can see my layout. Here's the picture down here to the right. And I really like how that's looking. So now I can remove all those pieces to the side, and I've got my picture to follow. So I know at least roughly where I want everything to go. So I do end up getting kind of mixed up a few times, but I still made it all work in the meantime. So just the same procedure as with the burlap that I had applied, except this time I'm going to start to overlap my fabrics. So I'm loving how this is looking so far, but I decided that I'm going to just kind of scrunch up some of my fabric pieces just to create a little bit more interest, and it will also help to prevent you from covering up too much of the under pieces as you start to lay everything out. So my wreath is all covered and I like how it is, but I decided I wanted to add another element. I'm going to wrap this with 3 strands of pip berries. I get these from Dollar Tree, but I've seen them elsewhere, like at Michael's, or maybe you can get them at your Walmart. I'm not sure. My Walmart doesn't carry stuff like this, but just use whatever you want. I just like the simplicity of this, but maybe you just want to leave yours plain. You could even add a bow if you'd like. You know, you could even take the stamped fabric that you had made, or that we had made, and you could wrap a styrofoam wreath with that as well. I think that would really be pretty too. So you can add a hanger to this if you'd like. I felt like I didn't need that, but I love how this turned out. Let me know what you think down below. I have so much more fall decor inspiration for you to check out in this video right here. I want to thank you all so very much for joining me today, and we will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.